My father was a hard man, stern but at the same time loving and fair. He didn't expect his kids to win or succeed every time we tried, but he did expect us to do our best. He lived by and taught us three things. You are responsible for your actions and their consequences. You try your best at whatever you attempted, and you kept your word. There were other beliefs and creeds that he and we lived by, but those three pretty much took care of everything. So I'm going to keep my word. No one would expect me to, and many will say that I'm an idiot for doing so. But I will keep my word. No one, including my father, would expect to keep my word after a promise made to me was broken. But I will keep my word. I'm Remington O'Connor, by the way, the youngest of three children and the only boy. I was somewhat of a brain in high school. If I got less than an A on any test, paper, or assignment, I would discuss the deficiencies with my teacher and the next grade would be an A, most times. Sometimes there was no remedy for the lower grade. Three things kept me from being your typical nerd. First, I had inherited my size from my father. By the time I was a junior in high school, I was 6'3" and weighed 230. It's hard for bullies to tease and abuse someone that's as big or bigger than they are. I have no qualms about defending myself or my friends, as some have learned to their detriment. For example, when I was a freshman in high school, one of the juniors, D. Bogart by name, started bothering my friends. Robert and Roberto were twins and lived across the street from me. They had moved in that summer, and we all started to hang around together. D decided he would mess with the new kids and started pushing them around. He knocked the books out of their arms, slapped Robert, and pushed Roberta to the ground when she tried to defend her brother. Then D and his entourage surrounded the twins and pushed them around the circle from one guy to the next. Robert and Roberta were just 14 and were small for their age. I was 14 as well, but I wasn't small. Even at 14, I was 6 feet and weighed 185. I stepped in and grabbed Dick's arm as he started to slap Robert again. "That's enough," I said. Dick was about 5 feet 8 inches and had to look up at me. "If you bother them again, you and I will have a problem," I stated as I turned him around and put his arm up behind his back. My sophomore year, I went to live with my aunt and uncle in St. Louis. There was a better chance for scholarships to college at the high school nearest their house. One of the alpha males there decided he would teach the country hick who was boss. He found out very quickly, but I don't think the lesson was what he expected. Thank God I had witnesses. It would have been hard to prove that his broken arm wasn't my fault without them telling the principal that I was just defending myself. Second, I was pretty good in all the major sports at our school. Not first team, but pretty good. People thought of me as a jock and were surprised at my good grades. I played football, baseball, and basketball. I even ran track one year to get in shape and maintain my conditioning. And third, I'm not a bad-looking guy. A ruggedly good-looking one of my girlfriends said. In addition, I wasn't shy with the girls at school. I grew up with 2 older sisters and had learned to hold my own with the female of the species. I mentioned that my father expected us to do our best at anything we attempted. Case in point, when I was 14 and about 6 feet tall, I got interested in the martial arts after watching too many kung fu movies and joined a dojo. I was a cocky, know-it-all kid, and the sensei, who was about 5 feet 7 inches, took me down a notch. I wanted to quit the second time he taught me a lesson, but my father wouldn't let me. He said I had to complete the class since he'd paid good money for me to take it. That was one of the best things that ever happened to me. I learned discipline. I developed the will to finish something I started and became, if not a lethal weapon, someone you didn't want to mess with. Another thing I learned was not to judge or underestimate someone because of their size. It is a mistake I never made again after finishing my time at the dojo. I met the girl that would become my wife my senior year. Alyssa Taylor was just this side of being a nerd herself. However, she was so friendly and helpful that no one thought of her as a geek. Of course, her looks weren't those of a geek or a nerd either. Alyssa was tall at 5 feet 10 inches with a runner's or skater body. She was slender and strong-looking. If she had been a man, wiry would have described her. The long auburn to dark red hair hung down to the small of her back, and the small field of freckles across her nose and cheeks set off her cornflower blue eyes. We were in 2 honor classes together that fall semester and got assigned as study partners in one of them. Our first study period together was for a math class. We were sitting next to each other working on a problem when her hair fell over her eyes. Without thinking, I reached over and brushed it back. She looked over at me with her startling blue eyes, fixing me with a piercing stare. I'd never really paid that much attention to Alyssa until those blue eyes bore into me like a laser. That one look made me realize that Alyssa was something special. It wasn't love at first sight or anything, but she made me see that I was wasting my time with other girls. I'd been dating the stereotypical blonde, bimbo cheerleader, the athletic groupies, and the spoiled princess-type girls. Ally was someone different. She was someone I could talk to about more important things than football, or whose party was the best, or did I like the way her hair looked. We spent a lot of time in St. Louis's famed Forest Park. The park is one of the largest urban parks in the U.S. and is filled with 4 museums, the stately Muni Opera, family activity areas, the exceptional St. Louis Zoo, and lush-treed landscaping. I asked Ally to go to an exhibit at the St. Louis Art Museum, and she agreed to go. She took me to a poetry reading also in Forest Park. We went to several shows at the Muni Opera and even visited the zoo a few times. That was the style of what became many dates. We didn't go to the movies, unless it was a classic like Casablanca. There were no parties thrown by some jock or cheerleader on our schedule. Our dates were more on the intellectual side. Don't misunderstand, we enjoyed the places we went to. I even learned some things. But we enjoyed being together more than anything. As with most high school romances, ours came to an end after graduation. She went to college at Northwestern, just outside of Chicago, and I went to Stanford, which is close to San Francisco. Both schools are known more for academics than for football and parties. This type of long-distance relationship would kill most romances. It certainly did ours. That spring I graduated and came back home to St. Louis. The plan was to get a job and continue my education at Washington University. I'd been home for about 3 weeks when fate or kismet or just dumb luck stepped in. The art museum was showing the same type exhibit that Ally and I had gone to on our first date. I don't know if I was feeling nostalgic or what, but I decided to go see the exhibit. There was a pictorial rendition of the Naked Truth sculpture from Compton Hill Reservoir Park in the south central part of St. Louis. That sculpture had sort of called to me when I was in high school, and now I could appreciate it more. I was studying the picture when someone bumped my arm. Turning to see who the clumsy person was, I saw Alyssa smiling at me. "Earth to Remy," she said, chuckling. "Hello, Ally. Damn, it's good to see you," I replied. That chance meeting led to coffee after the exhibit, which led to a dinner date the next night, which led to a play the following weekend. Very shortly, we were a couple again. Most evenings and sometimes nights were spent together. We hadn't slept together in high school, but we soon made up for that. I decided that I wasn't going to let her get away again, so I asked her to marry me. We would meet friends at a club once in a while. Alyssa loved to dance. I didn't care much for the dancing thing, but went along because she enjoyed it. I would dance a few times, and Alyssa would dance with her friends the rest of the time. She'd even dance with other guys once in a while, after asking my permission. It was totally innocent. She just enjoyed dancing. At one of the clubs, a guy I didn't know apparently was hot for Alyssa. After dancing with her a few times, he asked her to leave with him. She told him she was with her fiancé and wasn't interested. He didn't want to take no for an answer. "You've been teasing me all night," he said. He grabbed her arm and tried to pull her to the door. It was a bad move on his part. I walked over and grabbed his arm, applied a little force to a pressure point in his wrist. He had to let Alyssa go or suffer a broken wrist. "She doesn't want to go with you, buddy," I told him, barely controlling my anger. "It'd be a good idea if you left." This guy was about 5'9", much smaller than me. He must have been drunk or stupid or both, because he took a punch at me. When his friends helped him up off the floor, I stepped closer to him. Like I said, it'd be a good idea if you left. Alyssa took my arm as the guy and his buddies left the club. "Thank you, Remy. He just wouldn't leave me alone. I'll always be there to protect you, Ally. Always." The outdoor ceremony was small, and the weather accommodated us. Just immediate family and a few friends. We spent a weekend at the Chase Park Plaza, a plush downtown hotel, and then it was back to real life, setting up our new decent-sized apartment. I worked and went to school in the fall 3 nights a week. Alyssa worked in the personnel department of a manufacturing company. There wasn't much free time for each other, but what time we had we made the most of.